Hi guys, good evening and welcome back once again to the EdWord on my second video tonight. Ghostface is taking a little break. He's been catching, he's so happy he finally caught up on Scream. Well, we both did, and he's just taking a little break right now, so he's okay. Thanks for putting up with him. I hope you guys are finding his presence tolerable. I wouldn't necessarily say enjoyable, but at least tolerable. And he is informative. I'll give him that. I've listened to him do his recap videos, so I got to give him kudos for that. At least he's a fan. He's a very active fan. That being said, this was my episode review and recap for episode 5 of season 1 of Zoo. Blame It on Leo. And before I begin, of course, this episode will be full of spoilers. And if you're not caught up on Zoo, if you're a few episodes behind, do not continue watching or listening to this video. You have been warned, it is full of spoilers. That being said, I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good. They seem to like using the bats as a main antagonist in terms of animal attackers. Like I said in a few videos ago, the whole bats swarming and attacking planes thing is taken directly from the graphic novel. And, they're applying it to the show. And in this case, in Rio de Janeiro, the interesting thing is that bats aren't necessarily attacking people and bringing down chaos and mayhem and destruction. They're just swarming in daylight. Thousands upon thousands of bats are swarming in Rio de Janeiro all over the city in broad daylight, but not attacking or killing anybody. Yet. Keyword is yet. So they're just swarming, but it's still cause for alarm, and the government doesn't know what to do, and people are scared and superstitious, of course. So Chloe, Abraham, and Mitch head down there while Jamie and Oz stay behind to investigate the bacteria that Mitch recovered from the wolf's brain in the last episode. And who should show up to help conveniently? FBI agent Schaefer, whom they met at the prison fire site a few episodes ago. He's on to them, but he's not necessarily going to stop them, although he is curious as to what the hell they're up to, because it turns out they identified that this bacterial strain, and Mitch recognized it as being designed by a chemist. Like, he says a chemist left his mark, his signature in this bacterial design. And they traced it down to one name, Leo Butler. And that's a name that Evan Lee Hartley has written repeatedly all over in pages of his Bible. And in the opening of the episode, Jackson couldn't figure out who the hell Leo Butler was and what he was in relations to his father or Evan Lee Hartley until Mitch gets off the phone with a colleague of his who confirms who designed this bacteria, and it's this guy, Leon Butler. So Evan Lee Hartley knows him, which means Jackson's father probably knew him in some capacity. But basically, Jackson and Jamie decide to stay behind to try to track down Butler and figure out what exactly is going on with the wolves, at least, if not all of the animals, to see if his work has somehow contributed to that. So that's what our two teams have done. They've split up, and then it cuts to the episode keeps going back and forth between Boston. There's this nice young family in Boston, this woman, her daughter, and then the woman's husband, the stepfather, and apparently the little girl is dying. She's either has some kind of cancer or there is something wrong with her. They don't actually specify or say what is going on with her, but when we first meet her, her golden retriever begins barking, and at first, the second the scene starts to happen, I thought to myself, oh, they're doing this scene from the graphic novel, or this is their different version of it. But it didn't happen. It didn't go down that way yet. It still very well could happen, but the way the setting was, it immediately reminded me of that scene in the graphic novel where a big moment happens. I'm like, oh, but nothing happened. Oh well, there's other exciting stuff to come. But, the dog starts barking as if he's sensing something, and then the girl goes into convulsions. She starts having a seizure, and then her mom and stepdad rush in, but all they can do is really watch, and, that's all they can do to help her is watch, because you're not supposed to touch or interfere with a seizure victim, because you could actually make them hurt themselves even more. But she snaps out of it, and they seem accustomed to it, as does the girl. So I guess this little girl is terminally ill with something. And that's the last we see of them for a while. Like, oh, okay, new characters, or was that just a random thing? Cuts back to Rio. It turns out our Abraham, Chloe, and Mitch head to the ghettos of Rio de Janeiro, where most of the bat swarms seem to be congregating. And Mitch theorizes it's because of the poor sanitary conditions and just the overall horrible, miserable physical conditions that the ghettos are in as compared to the rest of the city, and how bats are probably drawn to all of the insects and the bacteria and whatnot in the area. And then Abraham recognizes a makeshift electrical box that the locals have put together, which supplies them with power, electricity, phone service, and all of a sudden, all these bats that are hanging from the edges of the rafters of this apartment building suddenly start swarming this electrical box. And at first, Mitch is like, oh, well, they might be after the insects because insects sometimes, hide in electrical parts. But the bats are like intent on wrecking that thing, and they start, they're hooking onto it like, you can see them. They're nipping and biting at this jury-rigged electrical box, and Abraham sees what they're doing, and he realizes what's about to happen, and then he grabs Chloe and Mitch. They all cover themselves. The bats blow up the handmade electrical box, and it sends a chain reaction because you can hear softer explosions in the distance as the rest of the makeshift electrical telephone pole things start blowing up all over the neighborhood. And it's as if the bats intentionally took out the human's power, which is exactly what they did in the last episode to the two lesbian scientists in their research base in Antarctica, when the bats swarmed and completely covered the solar panels, which cut off heat and electricity to the research base, thus freezing the two women to death. And maybe the bats are trying to do something similar here, where they cut off the humans' electricity and power supply, and that makes them more vulnerable, weaker. And of course, right after this happens, Mitch wants to collect a dead one so he can study it, examine it to see what's going on with these bats, because they spoke to a Brazilian intelligence official earlier who's an old acquaintance of Chloe's, apparently. And according to the Brazilian intelligence official, Gabriela, she's telling the team that the government is seriously considering using this type of insecticide, which could basically annihilate all the bats in the city. The problem is it could kill or seriously harm every living thing in Rio. Well, not kill, just physically and harm and change. Change is the big word they used. Every living thing in Rio, plants and other animals, and of course people. And Rio's a big city, so the government is seriously considering that because they see no other option. And that puts our team on a timeline here, a timetable. They got to figure out what's going on with these bats, or the government is practically going to insecticide the city. So, that's their only option. And as they try to collect this dead bat, they encounter a local gang of thugs, and they intimidate the three visitors. But Abraham, who's used to these kind of characters, basically bribes them or pays them off to leave them alone. And you can tell Abraham's done this kind of thing before. So that gives us more backstory on what Abraham's past could have been and who he was. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. Cut back to Mobile, Alabama. Jamie and Oz and the FBI agent Schaefer, thanks to Schaefer's efforts, managed to track down Leo Butler. And the whole reason Schaefer was onto Jamie and Oz in the first place was because the FBI, through their cyber division team, realized that somebody had hacked Raiden Global's accounts. And it turns out Leon Butler had been blackmailing this major corporation, Raiden Global, and using the blackmail money to give to charities and to foundations to communities that had been destroyed or affected by Raiden Global's activities. They managed to track down this Leon Butler in the swamps in Mobile, Alabama, and after a short confrontation, they convince him that they're not there to hurt him and they're not with Raiden Global. They want to ask him what he knows about what's going on with all the animals. And he eventually reveals to them that Raiden Global developed this genetically modified molecular cell, which he refers to as the mother cell. And this molecular cell, basically, it can do whatever Raiden Global designs it to do, and they put it in pretty much all of their products, from dog food to weed killer, and that probably includes insecticide if you think about it. So even if the Brazilian government decides to gas Rio de Janeiro in an attempt to destroy the bats, it probably wouldn't kill that many of them, if any of them, and would just make them even more aggressive, because this supposed mother cell is what's causing the animals to go crazy. Now, it's possible this could be our origin or our explanation as to the animals' behavior on the show so far, but knowing what does cause the animals to go crazy in the graphic novel, and of course I will not reveal that because that would be a big spoiler, because it may or may not be translated into the show, this could be the show's interpretation of the cause for the animals' hyper-aggressive behavior, and this may be our actual explanation, or this could be another promising lead for our main characters, which turns into a dead end, and it disappoints them and leaves them back to square one. Either way, it's interesting. It's an interesting theory where this, man-made molecular cell that Leon refers to as the mother cell is basically put in all of Raiden Global's products, and it can basically make everything look, taste, and be better, pretty much. But the whole reason Leon Butler quit Raiden Global and started blackmailing them was because when he was working for them as a chemist, he realized the damaging, devastating side effects the mother cell had, which could explain all of the animals' behavior all over the world, since Raiden Global is, like in the title says, a global corporation. This could be affecting animals worldwide. So we cut back to Boston, and it turns out the little girl let out the golden retriever, and the stepdad had to go look for it. And, she and her mom are having a moment together. They're talking, and then the mom gets a call on her cell. It's the husband, the stepfather. He's like, hey, Dogsman was hit by a car, but he's okay. He's alive, but has a broken leg. I'm taking him to the vet. And we don't see the mother reveal that to her daughter, but of course it's implied. And then we're back in Rio de Janeiro, and our team down there is trying to figure out what's going on with the bats and what they can do. What other alternative could they use instead of gassing the city? And then they begin speculating. Chloe begins speculating, what if the reason the bats even attacked the makeshift electrical box was because they were attracted to the radio waves that was being projected off of it. And she's trying to explain, and she makes reference to the research base in Antarctica from the last episode, so obviously they know about that as well. So bats are becoming pretty big offenders all over the world right now. And so they basically come up with this kind of crazy, asinine plan to create some kind of makeshift power source themselves, which will give off radar and like sonar waves, which of course will affect and hopefully lure the bats. But Mitch does point out to her, though, that just because something is attracted to something else doesn't necessarily mean they're going to attack it. He makes a humorous reference of how he was attracted to his ex-wife, but threw all of her clothes out on the lawn. But his original point is the bats weren't necessarily attracted to the makeshift electrical box. They deliberately attacked it. And speaking of deliberately attacked, when Chloe calls Jackson for an update, what should be hanging from their hotel patio ceiling but a bat, and the bats kind of sneaks attack her and then makes her drop her phone on the patio while she's talking to Jackson. And of course he brings her up to speed. They found Leon Butler, and he's finally agreed to get the mother cell for them. But before he could even explain what the mother cell is, that's when the bat attacks, and the bat repeatedly pecks at and bites at the phone as if it's attempting to destroy it, and then it just flies away into the night, leaving a very bewildered Chloe as to what the hell just happened. And then, of course, that made me wonder and scratch my chin. Did that little son of a bitch deliberately go after the phone, knowing that Chloe was communicating with another person on there? Are the animals becoming that intelligent? And sure enough, when she shares this with Mitch, he explains the whole food chain theory about how apex predators are number 5, being on the very top. Tigers, sharks, birds of prey. And then he reveals that, shockingly, human beings are not on the same level as a number 5. They're actually more like a 2.0 or 2.2. And the only reason that human beings are technically the largest and most successful species of all the species on Earth is because of our ability to reason and our usage of technology. And that leads Chloe to fear and suspect, which she shares with Mitch and Abraham, that what if the animals eventually figure out the only thing protecting the humans is their technology, which very well could explain the bats' bizarre behavior for attacking sources of power created and used by humans. The solar panels in Antarctica, and now the makeshift electrical boxes in Rio de Janeiro. What if the bats are the first of the animals to figure that out? What if this begins affecting all the animals? So they finally devise a theory. Okay, we're going out into the jungle to create our new power source, and hopefully that'll lure the bats away and out of the city permanently, and it'll keep them all in the jungle so the government doesn't have to gas Rio. They go out there and they attempt to salvage a makeshift electrical box, but unfortunately they're taken at gunpoint by the same gang of thugs who ambushed them earlier. And then, of course, cut back to Mobile, Alabama. Leon finally agrees to take only Jamie out to the location where he retrieves the mother's cell from a hidden area, which we do not see, leaves her in the car, he brings it back. Unfortunately, FBI agent Schaefer hacked Leon's laptop account, and he was able to activate the GPS in Leon's cell phone so they could keep an eye on him and track him and Jamie's movements in case Leon just tries to escape from them and leave Jamie behind somewhere. But when Leon notices his GPS is active on his phone and he tells Jamie, I never use my GPS, he gets suspicious that they're tricking him, using him, and before he has a chance to become further provoked, all of a sudden, BAM! Somebody hits them. And at first I thought, oh no, what if it's Raiden Global? What if they've been tracking and looking for him all along? Turns out, not the case. Leon looks dead, but very well could just be unconscious. Jamie is most definitely alive, just bruised and shaken, upside down. And who should it be but Evan Lee Hartley, the inmate who escaped the prison during the wolf attack and has worked with Jackson's father. And he takes the mother cell and just leaves her behind. So now all of our characters are scattered and all of them are in pretty desperate situations because now Schaefer and Jackson don't know where Leon and Jamie are and what's happened to them. And Mitch, Abraham, and Chloe have basically been taken hostage by the gang of thugs in Rio, and time is running out because come the next morning, the government is going to gas the entire city, mostly affecting humans and possibly killing most of the population, and will probably not even affect the bats. So this was an entertaining episode. I liked it. Oh, and one final thing. It turns out the family in Boston they kept cutting back and forth to, it turns out that this is the family Mitch mentioned earlier this season in an earlier episode to Jamie when she asked him about family. This is his ex-wife and little girl. And the mother even tells the little girl that her father hasn't even seen her. No, she tells this to her husband. She mentions how the father hasn't even seen his daughter since she was 2 years old. And she's like 9 or 10 right now, so that's a really long time. And in an old family photo, we see Mitch holding the golden retriever as a puppy. You know, this was probably before the girl was born, and Mitch obviously left after that. So it's interesting to see. We'll most likely see this family again in Boston, and that golden retriever is most likely going to get turned real nasty real fast, like the other animals in the show. And I gotta tell you guys, with all the promos coming up, all the quick teasers and whatnot for what's going to happen in the rest of the season, it looks like it's going to get really exciting really fast. I know I keep repeating myself here, but trust me, you guys, since I've read the graphic novel and I kind of know what's coming, and I say the words kind of because obviously they'll change things for the show and in the show, but trust me, it gets really, really good. So keep bearing with me and keep bearing with the show, bearing with CBS, and because I really think it's going to pay off really big. So thanks for watching and tuning in, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Zoo as much as I did. And please subscribe to this video, like and comment, and leave your thoughts opinions down below. Let's be respectful of one another's opinions and beliefs. What did you like about this episode? Who's your favorite character so far? Which animal would you like to see become the next aggressor? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a predator. It could even be horses or zebras if you want to. But yeah, just leave your thoughts and opinions down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. You know, this is all about reaching out to you and talking to you guys. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time, may the force be with you.